He moves like a rumor through the city, anonymous in a parka the color of wet concrete, another shape among shapes on a winter block in South Boston where the snow turns to gray slush and the streetlights hum as if they remember better nights. He has a name for contracts, a different name for bank accounts, and a real name he almost never uses. To the few who pay to know him, he is a clean result with an exit plan, the person who removes what cannot be negotiated away. To himself, he is a system of rules that keep the past sealed. The rules are precise, severe, and they have saved him from every kind of consequence, from law and from memory. Tonight, the rules take him up 3 flights of narrow wooden stairs, in a walk-up that smells like radiator dust, old coffee, and winter air leaking through the frame. He studies the hall while he breathes. The building pushes back with creaks, a body settling on tired bones. He has already learned the rhythm of the neighbor's television through the wall, the door that sticks on 3B, the window latch in the stairwell that whistles when the wind comes from the harbor. He has already memorized the timing of the bus at the corner, the way the building quiets after the bus door sighs shut, the pocket of stillness that follows. In that stillness, he moves. He lifts the latch tool like a person lifts a pen mid-sentence. The lock on 3A is stubborn but unskilled. He respects it and then ignores it. The door yields with the exhausted little surrender of cheap metal. Inside, a one-bedroom with a long line of thrift furniture and a heat that has not figured out how to reach the corners. He sweeps the room in a practiced rectangle. He does not wonder about the framed diploma over the sagging bookshelf, the plant that suffers with quiet dignity on the windowsill, the lone mug left to dry upside down on the sink. He notes, catalogs, discards. There is a coat on a chair, a messenger bag on the floor. There is a stack of papers bound with a rubber band next to a laptop with a sticker from a lab at a university that everyone has heard of, and only a few have entered. He confirms what the brief said, a data analyst with a contract job at a biomedical research firm in Cambridge, a quiet tenant who jogs before dawn, a person who eats at the same 2 places, a person who tips well, a person with no enemies except the kind who do not leave their names. He waits in the dark, the cold air from the back window seeping under the door and into his sleeves. When the target arrives, the hallway gives notice in small sounds. The target fumbles keys like a man who lives alone and has stopped pretending that anyone cares how he enters a room. A lamp clicks on. The door swings. The target steps into a life that will only be measured by how it ends. The man is late 20s, maybe 30, cheeks raw from the wind, a haircut that was meant to be cheap but neat, the kind of face that would be forgettable if it were not so open in its effort. The assassin rises behind him from the darkness like a correction. Everything happens in the span of a held breath. Once, long ago, the assassin decided never to narrate endings. He enforces that decision now with the same discipline he uses to keep his hands steady. It is fast. It is clean. The man's body folds into the brown carpet with a heaviness that surprises the air. The assassin recognizes the way eyes search, the ceiling at the end, the reflex of a human brain looking for a sky, any sky. He does not follow the eyes. He checks the pulse. He verifies silence. He steps into the small bathroom to wash his hands with bar soap that smells like a morning no one will have again. He studies his reflection out of habit and sees nothing that holds still long enough to be certain. He turns to leave and stops. Something glints under the edge of the bookcase near the diploma, a little nick in the carpet pile where a vacuum never reaches. He does not indulge curiosity. He only runs checklists. But the checklist has room for anomalies, and the anomaly is a lanyard chain that must have snapped, a cheap metal loop with a tag that does not belong to a professional adult. He pulls it free with 2 fingers. It is a plastic rectangle from a county fair in upstate New York, a souvenir with a cartoon rocket and a faded name written in careful marker like a promise meant for a child. The name is not the target's current name. The name belongs to someone else entirely, a first name that tastes like a word he has not let himself say in 2 decades. A word that blew out with breath on cold mornings at a foster home where boys traded baseball cards and dared one another to jump fences. The plastic rectangle reads Aiden with a star sketched beside it. The star is drawn the way he used to draw stars. The handwriting is his handwriting at age 9. The room tilts a degree to the left, almost imperceptible, until everything that was proportionate is suddenly wrong. He kneels without deciding to. He takes the lanyard chain to the narrow desk where the laptop sleeps in its own blue light, and the modest life tries to look orderly beneath a mess of stapled printouts. He sees the rubber-banded stack again. He slides it free. The top sheet is a photocopy of a hospital bracelet. The letters are blocky, black on white, with the kind of printer ink that flakes off if you rub it. The bracelet bears the surname he abandoned, the one the state clerks mispronounced and the caseworkers spelled 3 different ways. Beneath that surname sits the same first name from the lanyard. He does not need to say it to know it. He reads. The date counts backward, measures the space between memory and proof. The bracelet belonged to the boy who slept 1 bunk over in a state group home where everything was temporary and nothing was gentle. The bracelet belonged to a brother. The assassin's left hand begins to tremble. He hates that he sees it, hates more that he cannot stop it. He closes his fist until the knuckles go pale. He hears the radiator hiss and pop with smug indifference. The body on the floor has settled into silence in a way that bodies do when the room gets tired of holding tension. He looks once. He allows himself that. The chin is familiar only now. The angle of the jaw, an old scar near the hairline he once traced with a toy car during a flu that kept 2 boys in a cot shivering under a fire hazard blanket. He sees a ghost of a smile that boy carried. A smile, built out of mischief and denial, a smile the world has been trying to beat out of boys since time began. He does not feel grief yet. He feels arithmetic. He feels procedure based on new information. He feels a system booting to a new operating mode where the mission parameters include a condition no architect anticipated. He checks the clock he keeps in his head, calculates law enforcement response times on a night like this, measures who, heard what and when. He resets. He wipes what he has touched and then wipes what he might have touched and then wipes what he knows he did not touch but would accuse himself of later. He keeps the bracelet photocopy and the lanyard tag. He gathers the rubber band stack because he cannot leave the papers that prove something untenable. He closes the laptop lid without waking it. He leaves the apartment exactly as he found it except for the rearrangement that cannot be undone. He slips into the hall and listens. The television next door blooms into a laugh track. The stairwell carries a draft that smells like old cooktops and someone's cheap cologne. He moves down and out with the same indifference he has always, worn as armor. On the sidewalk, he blends into the weather. A man with a hood up is a story no one pays to hear. At the corner, he stops under a dead street lamp as if he belongs to the dark. He replays every step, checks for tails, imagines himself from above like a dot on a map that can be erased if it stays still long enough. He walks 2 more blocks, turns into an alley that has only one way out, uses the opportunity to confirm. He is alone because people who want to kill him tend to forget what alleys cost. He steps to the end, emerges into a strip of neon where a convenience store glows like a confession booth. He buys a pack of gum he will not chew. He walks again and keeps walking until the bus groans up to the curb and he climbs on and becomes a silhouette in a scratched window going nowhere anyone can name. He looks at the lanyard tag against his palm. He compresses the plastic until it almost snaps. He remembers a woman's face he has refused to imagine for 20 years. He remembers a day when a social worker with apologetic eyes explained that siblings sometimes get separated because paperwork hates intimacy. He remembers promising a smaller boy that promises were real things, that a next week would exist, that he would come back. He remembers not coming back. He remembers building rules to survive the remembering. He breathes in the bus heat that smells like winter coats, diesel, and the faint sweetness of cheap hand sanitizer. He does not cry. The rules did not allow it then. They do not allow it now. But something else breathes in the bus with him, something that knows how to make a person tear up without tears. The city slides past, a long, low river of sodium light, and windows full of other people's lives he will never enter. Across town, the safe apartment is a room with white walls that refuses to remember anyone who has slept there. He closes the door and becomes a locked circle. He lays the papers on the table and gives himself permission to think like a brother for exactly 5 minutes. He reads the hospital code, the date, the clinic address stamped near the barcode. He sees a photocopy of a pharmacy receipt with a partial name of a physician in Alston. He sees the logo of a non-profit clinic that advertises genetic ancestry, testing with a sliding scale. He sees a sticky note printed with the outline of the state and a number for a woman who schedules intake interviews on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He sees an appointment time that never came to pass. He knows the pattern. A quiet man in a modest apartment, a job at a legitimate company with illegitimate secrets to steal, a whistleblower or a thief depending on who writes the report. He knows that jobs like this do not come to him by accident. He knows that someone with money wanted this man ruined in a way that looked like the city's normal violence. He knows that handlers with rubber voices shield clients with shell corporations. He knows that the chain that leads to the envelope of cash on a safe house table also leads to the name of a person whose existence now touches a boundary that was not meant to be crossed. He knows that if he follows the chain back, it will become a net. He knows he will do it anyway. He takes out a notebook he never labels. He writes a single name and then draws a small star beside it. The same shape he used to draw on plastic key tags at county fairs. The same shape his hand remembers before his mind approves. He prints Aiden and the star, and beneath it he writes the name he uses to get work, and then he draws a hard line under both. He writes a question that does not deserve a question mark. Who ordered this? He writes a second line that belongs to a person he used to be. Why did no one tell me he existed? He tears the page out, folds it twice, and sets it on the table like a place card at a dinner for the ghosts of boys. He sets a timer for 2 hours of sleep that he knows he will not take. He sits in the chair where sun will fall if he stays, until morning. He waits for one thought to arrive that is not an explosion. It does not arrive. He accepts that planning will have to be done inside the blast radius. The rules had been simple. Do not ask why. Do not touch the past. Do not bring yourself to the job. Do not bring the job home. Tonight, he has broken all of them without trying. He takes the hospital bracelet photocopy between forefinger and thumb and holds it to the lamp until the paper warms. He imagines what the original felt like against skin. He imagines a boy sick, and a boy scared, and a boy alone, and a boy who kept a smile alive like a contraband light in a night with too many guards. He imagines that boy growing into a man who kept careful notes and jogged before dawn and paid taxes on time because no one had ever picked him on purpose. He imagines that man opening a door to his own ending because someone else had decided the truth would be safer in a morgue. He decides that mourning will belong to the clinic. He decides that the person who wrote the bank transfer that funded his envelope will learn what it costs when a man who never asks why finally does. He decides nothing else and waits for the city to make a mistake he can use. The clinic sits on a corner where good intentions come to work and leave exhausted. He watches from a coffee shop across the street where a handwritten menu pretends prices have paused. He does not drink his coffee. He lets it cool into something like ink. The clinic's logo is a stylized helix that leans like a dancer hurrying to catch a bus. The sign promises compassionate care and affordable ancestry mapping, promises help to people who need help interpreting what blood says when asked the right questions. He waits through the early appointments, the mothers with toddlers, the old man with the veteran's cap, the 2 students laughing in a way their loans will later punish. He times the traffic light and the walk signal cycles until the city begins to repeat itself. When the office manager hangs a cardboard sign that reads lunch, he moves. He enters as a person who knows where things are kept in buildings like this. The receptionist's desk is unattended. The back hallway smells like lemon disinfectant and printer toner. He does not touch doorknobs with skin. He carries a clean handkerchief folded into a triangle. He does not hurry because haste is a confession. He turns into records, a room with low shelves and a soft hum that belongs to a hard drive. The cabinet drawers hold file folders with labels that had been typed by someone who once believed the right font could keep a universe in order. He scans surnames the way a musician scans notes on a staff. He does not see his childhood name and does not panic. He sees the brother's adult name, the not-quite alias that the world learned to accept. He slides the folder out like a magician slides a scarf from a sleeve. Inside, intake forms printed from an online questionnaire, a scan of a driver's license from Massachusetts, the proof of address only people without trust funds need to keep, in a gas bill. He reads a line where the brother had typed yes to the question about state custody before age 18. He reads no criminal record with an earnestness that makes him ache. He reads a contact phone number and then a second number for emergencies that is blank. He reads the name of the staff member who conducted the initial consultation. He reads the date of the missed follow-up that never occurred because someone else interceded. He reads a sticky note that says, "Follow-up on sibling query," and under it a half-finished note in the same hand. If patient consents, search sealed records index per statutory. The sentence ends before the law arrives to bless or forbid. A small drive the size of a matchbox sits in an envelope clipped to the back of the folder. On it, a label the staffer had written with a neatness that comes from not knowing anyone will bleed over the outcome. The label says raw data, reference set A plus sibling flags. He slips the drive into an inner pocket designed for such things. He photographs the rest of the file with a phone that belongs to nobody. He closes the folder and slides it home. He leaves the room exactly as it was, except for the part where the universe knows a man has taken something it wanted to keep for later. He exits past the reception desk as the office manager returns holding a brown paper bag and a steaming cup. Their eyes do not touch. The bell over the door chirps like a mechanically cheerful bird. On the sidewalk, he blends again and becomes traffic. He knows that raw data is useless without a key. He knows keys live in people or in places people consider boring, like basements, with humming racks or cloud dashboards that look like a menu at a diner only administrators can afford. He knows the clinic cannot unlock the kind of sealed records that would have kept two boys ignorant of each other for most of their lives. He knows those records belong to the state and to contractors who pretend to be separate from the state. He knows where such contractors live because he has done work for their enemies. He goes not to a server farm, but to a building that pretends to be an accounting office near Government Center, a place with carpet so new it smells like a threat. He knows an elevator code because he knows the man who installed the keypad and the woman who paid him under a shell company that wrote checks with a name like Atlas Northern Consulting, which is the kind of name people give companies when they fear both gravity and maps. On the 5th floor, he uses a stairwell door that opens to a supply corridor thick with the sound of air moving through its obligations. He finds the room with the cabinet that nobody labels. Inside that cabinet, he finds what he came for: a binder with laminated instruction sheets for complying with subpoenas the firm never receives, a chain of custody form for electronic data, and a laminated phone list with a number assigned to a state liaison whose office is in a building famous for its misery. He does not call. He does not sign. He only reads, remembers, and leaves with a photograph of a form template that tells him which door to ask in which tone. He goes next to a municipal records hall where light from tall windows makes everything look honest. He requests a thing the hall cannot legally provide without proof of kinship. He provides the proof he stole from a clinic that believes in optimism. The clerk studies forms with the face of a person who could end a war by putting the right stamp on the right line. The clerk asks for a supervisor without asking. The supervisor materializes like a change in weather and decides that one photocopy of one index page of a file that the state already allowed to slip into the world as a scanned bracelet could not possibly harm anything. The photocopy is warm and smells like toner and inevitability. On it, a notation in pen from a decade ago links two case numbers briefly and then draws a line through the link. The pen stroke is emphatic, embarrassed. Another notation, in a different pen, writes "Do not pursue." Separation finalized. The handwriting is careless and sure. The two numbers become two lives again and go on without each other for 10 more years. He looks at the numbers and understands why the lanyard tag existed. A boy had once looked back down a hallway of closed doors and decided to invent a promise no adult could enforce. A boy had given himself a star and a name to carry through counties. A promise had become a life, and a life had become a record, and a record had become an entry in a system that people with budgets pretend is neutral. On the street, he counts cameras, angles, the faculty of the city to record only what is least useful. He moves through it like a shadow cast by a different sun. He knows he cannot resurrect, only investigate. He goes back to the safe apartment and plugs the tiny drive into a machine that cannot be traced to a person. He opens files that display as matrices of letters and numbers arranged for experts who talk in acronyms at conferences in hotel ballrooms. He does not speak that language, but he knows someone who does, a woman who owes him a favor because he once declined to make her ex-husband a memory. He does not call her voice. He never uses voices. He impersonates an insurer on a secure chat application that a biotech trade group thinks prevents shame. He asks a technical question in a bland way. He parses the answer like a thief listening to a lullaby through a wall. He learns which commercial service the clinic outsourced its ancestry reports to, which algorithm version the data requires, which server region stores the anonymized reference sets for New England clinics. He learns that a sibling flag triggers a recommendation to verify identity across sealed records. He learns that verification requires consent, and that consent is now an artifact in a room with yellow tape. He runs the math again. Someone knew before him. Someone close to the clinic or close to the brother's work knew that the brother had asked the world a question the world did not want him to ask. Someone made a call or sent a message in a channel with a cheerful name like Operations Misk. Someone said perhaps an opportunity has arisen. Someone with money decided to solve two problems with one transaction: remove a person who might break a corporate secret, and remove a person who might reconnect a chain they paid to split. He considers the handler who brokered the work, the man who signs emails with a first initial and a last name that is almost certainly not the one on his passport. The handler likes jazz and balanced ledgers. The handler once told him the only thing that matters is clean exits. The handler will now learn that exits can be doors or detonations. He opens the envelope where cash sleeps. He subtracts the portion a man would keep on a job with no complications. He leaves the remainder on the table with the bracelet copy as if money can confess. He writes beside it a line he never writes: debt. He folds the cash into a plain white bag and uses a rideshare he will never call again to visit a church that runs a food pantry on Thursdays. He leaves the bag with a volunteer who thanks the universe out loud. He walks away before the universe can hear his name. He refuses to profit from what has happened, not because he thinks it will matter to anyone who counts, but because he wants one system near him to forget that money consecrates everything it touches. Night returns like a fact. He knows the handler will be awake in a hotel suite with bad art in a city whose skyline tries to convince men their choices are small. He chooses a rooftop across from the hotel because glass tells the truth to people who know how to read it. He watches a window on the 22nd floor glare and dim. Glare and dim. a heartbeat of a person who imitates routine as a way to keep fear at a polite distance. He knows the handler keeps paper somewhere in that room, not because paper is safer, but because men like the handler have old habits and distrust only when it is fashionable. He plans an entry and an exit, and then a second exit in case the first becomes a story. He plans contingencies for contingencies and a hole to fall into if the building decides to swallow him. He plans because grief is not available and rage is too loud. He plans because plans are ladders, and he is dangling over a drop he cannot measure. He enters the suite without making the door complicit. Everything inside is symmetrical in the way money likes. A bar, a bowl of citrus arranged by a person who thinks order prevents rot, 2 armchairs that would squeak if they knew how. The handler is not present. A jacket lies on a bed that is too big for a single man who collects secrets as if they are baseball cards that never degrade. He moves through shadow with the same respect he shows light. He finds the briefcase with a biometric lock. He picks it without touching skin to censor. Inside, a ledger printed on thick ivory pages, because the handler likes to remember that he belongs to an era when people wore suits because they feared God. The ledger uses codes that pretend to be neutral. He decodes by intuition and by the small mistakes men make when they think they are the only reader. He finds a sequence that matches the time and payout of the brother job. He sees the client expressed as a single letter followed by an ampersand, and then a word that could be a project name or the name of a man. He sees Vance adjacent to a sum that could fund a mid-sized life. He sees a note handwritten in the margin, a careless flourish. Deliverables require discretion beyond standard. He photographs everything and closes the case the way a church closes, a door after a service, quiet and convinced. He leaves the suite as the handler enters from the elevator lobby, humming the kind of tune men hum when they imagine themselves as protagonists. The assassin stands in the stairwell and hears the door open and close and counts the seconds to confirm the handler did not notice that the air in the room has been rearranged. He descends 2 floors and then climbs 1 because patterns confuse. Pursuers. He exits through a service corridor where a cart of linen stands like a deputized witness. He steps into a street where the city yawns, bored by crimes it has seen before. He keeps moving until the hotel becomes a postcard in someone else's memory. Back in the safe apartment, he lays the photographs of the ledger across the table like tarot. Vance is not a project. Vance is a family that deploys philanthropy the way other families deploy private security. Vance is a tower on the harbor where a man with lacquered hair donates wings to hospitals while bidding on patents that convert pain into revenue. Vance is a gala in February, where a wing of the museum will be named after a person who writes checks as if signatures are weapons. Vance is a rumor in labs about a study that will change the world at a price the world does not understand it is agreeing to pay. Vance is the kind of name the handler would write without thinking of the funeral it implies. The assassin realizes that he has arrived at the kind of border where laws thin out and reputations become the currency that purchases silence. He writes a new plan. It includes the gala because galas are where men pretend consequences have tutors. It includes a data room because data rooms are where truth naps until someone shakes it awake. It includes a name badge because a name badge is a key if worn with the right stride. It includes a fire alarm because fire alarms are the closest thing cities have to honest conversation. It includes an escape route through a service tunnel, because service tunnels are the only hallways left that remember what human bodies feel like when they run out of choices. He closes his eyes and lets the city's map settle under his lids. He sees routes and rhythms, guard rotations and camera blind spots, the difference between a volunteer and a professional, the taste a lobby gets when a donor arrives. He opens his eyes. Sleep would be a waste. He holds the paper bracelet again and lets it remind him that a boy once waited for a brother who did not return. He promises himself something he has never promised. He will not fail the present version of that boy twice. He puts the bracelet copy back on the table as if it can watch over the plan. He straps on a shoulder holster he hopes not to need. He tells the rules to stand by while emergency protocol runs. He is stepping into a room with his own past, and he knows the room is full of furniture no one can see until they crash into it. He thinks the word brother once. He lets it be a noun, not a wound. He goes to work. The museum does not sleep. It only changes costumes. By day, it wears sunlight like an invitation. By night, it dresses in chandeliers and security checkpoints, a palace for patrons who believe. Art can be owned if their names are carved into stone near the entrance. Tonight, the banners flutter with the word Vance printed in gold serif, a word heavy enough to bend the air. Inside, the marble floors echo with the laughter of people who have rehearsed their laughter. The assassin enters through a side service door, dressed as a vendor whose badge was printed in a rush by an intern who believed in clipboards. His jacket is black, his shoes ordinary, his stride calm. The guards notice him the way people notice a chair. Necessary, unremarkable, assumed. He walks the halls as if he is carrying trays, invisible in the way labor always is in places designed for spectacle. He studies the angles, cameras set at eye level, guards positioned for ceremony rather than strategy, the bottleneck of guests forming near the sculpture wing where champagne fizzes like vanity trapped in glass. He counts exits, measures stairwells, notes the acoustic shape of each gallery. He keeps one hand on a folded paper in his pocket, the photocopy of the bracelet, because it is the only thing tethering him to intention when the room's wealth tries to hypnotize. The Vance heir arrives late, as heirs are trained to do. He glides into the atrium with the confidence of a man who has never been asked to wait in line. His tuxedo is tailored to flatter the myth that privilege is earned. Cameras flash. The crowd leans. The orchestra swells with a borrowed melody. The assassin watches from the mezzanine where shadows linger. He sees the man shake hands, smile, deliver platitudes about the future of medicine. He sees the guests bow with their eyes, complicit in the ritual. He sees the man as a problem disguised as philanthropy. Behind the galleries, in a corridor hung with reproductions that no one bothers to frame properly, the assassin finds what he came for: a door labeled Authorized Personnel Only. Beyond it, a data room disguised as storage, filled with file cabinets that no one uses anymore, each one guarding drives that hum softly like restrained storms. He slips inside with a badge borrowed from a caterer who never knew it existed. The room smells like dust and ozone, the scent of secrets pretending to be boring. On the central desk lies a binder, thick with event manifests, guest lists, donor agreements. He flips through pages until he sees the word Ancestry Data Licensing. Agreement. The contract is between Vance Biomedical Holdings and a research firm in Cambridge, the same firm where his brother worked. The clauses are dense, written in a dialect of lawyers who treat language as camouflage, but he understands the shape of it. DNA collected for medical curiosity, repurposed for profit, sold as prediction models to insurers who will deny coverage, before diseases have names. He photographs each page with calm precision. He finds a second folder labeled Irregularities. Inside, a list of employees flagged for non-compliant access. His brother's name appears twice, circled in red ink. Next to it, a note in handwriting he recognizes from the handler's ledger: Terminate before exposure. The letters are jagged, rushed, written by someone who believed urgency could excuse cruelty. He traces the words with his eyes until they burn into memory. The gala noise seeps through the door. Applause, a voice on a microphone thanking donors for their generosity. He pockets the folder and steps back into the hall as if he belongs to it. He sees guests drift past in waves of perfume and practiced indifference. He sees the Vance heir raise a glass in a toast that tastes of ash. He does not hear the words, only the cadence of power disguised as benevolence. He He slips through the crowd unseen because people never look at the ones who carry trays. Outside, the night air is cold enough to bite. He stands under the stone lions at the entrance and watches the limousines arrive and depart. The city hums with neon, horns, and the arrogance of money. He thinks of his brother jogging before dawn, lungs steaming, shoes slapping against pavement no one remembered. He thinks of the bracelet, the lanyard tag, the stack of papers that smelled of hope. He thinks of promises broken by adults who signed forms instead of keeping families together. He thinks of the ledger, the word Vance, the phrase terminate, before exposure. The rules are gone now. In their place is a single directive. Find the line that ordered this death and cut it so clean that no one will ever sew it shut again. He returns to the safe apartment and spreads the photographs across the table. Each page is a blade. Each note is a wound. He builds a map with strings of thought, the clinic, the research firm, the handler, the Vance heir. At the center, his brother's name, written once more with the star beside it. The map is not complete, but it is enough to begin. The night grows older, but he does not sleep. He sharpens intention like a knife, waiting for the city to open its next door. The city does not conspire. It simply circulates secrets until someone like him decides to listen. At dawn, he walks past the wharves where fishermen unload crates that smell like brine and persistence. He blends into the rhythm of commuters who clutch coffee cups as if they are passports. He moves toward the building where the handler rents his anonymity, a glass tower pretending to be respectable. He does not rush. Predators who rush are only prey in disguise. The handler is meticulous. He rises early, checks ledgers, sends encrypted messages that sound like pleasantries. He believes the world is tidy if accounts reconcile. The assassin enters through the underground garage where security cameras point at angles too polite to notice laborers. He waits in the stairwell until the handler's shoes tap the concrete. He lets the man pass, then follows, close enough to hear breath but far enough to be a rumor. On the 7th floor, the handler unlocks his office door. Inside, the lights wake reluctantly. The assassin enters behind him before the room can register 2 occupants. The handler freezes, instinct catching up to recognition. No words are exchanged. There are no voices here. The assassin shows him the photograph of the ledger page, the note with his handwriting. Terminate before exposure. The handler's eyes flicker with calculations, none of which matter. The ledger burns in his memory. The brother's name circles in red ink forever. The assassin does not ask questions. He does not want explanations, because explanations are only disguises. He acts with the inevitability of gravity. The handler falls silently across his own desk, a ledger page fluttering to the floor like a confession no one will read. He leaves the office the way he entered, unseen, carrying nothing but certainty. Outside, the city continues its mourning. Rituals. The buses still sigh at curbs. Children still drag backpacks too heavy for their spines. No one notices that one more man has been subtracted from the arithmetic of power. But subtraction is not enough. The name Vance glows in his mind, like neon that refuses to burn out. The family towers over the skyline, feeding on secrecy. His brother's death was not an accident of timing. It was the cost of a corporation protecting its hoard. The assassin knows that vengeance must escalate, not scatter. He begins with research disguised as patience. He studies gala speeches archived, online, foundation newsletters, board member rosters. He traces campaign donations that loop back to legislation that shelters profit. He follows patent filings through shell companies with names bland enough to lull accountants. Each breadcrumb leads closer to the Vance heir, the man who raised a glass while blood cooled on a cheap carpet. The plan is not flamboyant. It is a line drawn straight through the marble facade of privilege. He infiltrates the office tower where Vance Biomedical's executives hide behind tinted windows. He poses as a contractor installing fiber lines, the kind of man who wears a badge no one reads and carries tools no one questions. He maps the private elevator routes, the panic rooms, the biometric locks. He learns which guards trust their phones more than their eyes. At night, he returns with precision. He bypasses locks that were expensive but predictable. He enters the executive suite where the Vance heir rehearses power in front of glass walls, overlooking the harbor. The man does not know he is being watched. He paces, rehearses a speech, checks his reflection, smiles into it as if mirrors were audiences. The assassin steps from shadow-like consequence wearing human shape. The heir startles, mouth opening to summon help that will never arrive. The assassin shows him the photocopy of the hospital bracelet, the star, the name, Aiden. The heir does not understand, but he sees enough in the assassin's eyes to know this moment is final. No words are spoken. The reckoning is swift, deliberate, unadorned. The heir collapses against the glass, leaving a smear that the janitors will later mistake for an accident. The assassin stands over him, the city's skyline reflected in the window, as if all of Boston had witnessed the act. He leaves the way he came, erasing traces, carrying only the weight of inevitability. Outside, the harbor wind claws at his coat. The rules are gone, the ledger is closed, and vengeance has rewritten its own commandments. Yet even now, silence is not peace. He returns to the safe apartment and lays the bracelet copy on the table. The star looks childish, innocent, permanent. He realizes revenge has not rebuilt anything. It has only honored a ghost with fire. He understands that his brother will never jog another morning, never pay another tip, never wait for a promise that might arrive. The city exhales around him. Somewhere, alarms will sound in corporate boardrooms. Somewhere, headlines will guess at scandals. Somewhere, men in suits will argue about liability. None of it will resurrect the boy from the bunk bed. He sits in the chair until sunrise, letting light crawl across the walls. He thinks of Aiden's smile, the scar near his hairline, the laugh that once filled a group home corridor. He lets the memory become the only sound. The reckoning is complete. The silence remains. Morning news does not tell truths. It sells fragments polished into headlines. Screens in diners, lobbies, and train stations flash with words like tragedy, scandal, untimely death. The Vance heir is reported gone, a sudden collapse in his office tower. Anchors speculate about heart conditions, stress, foul play whispered but not confirmed. Stock prices stumble. Shareholders call emergency meetings. Lawyers polish statements. None of them speak the word murder. None of them know the word brother. The assassin watches from a bus seat, another passenger hidden among tired faces. His reflection in the scratched window does not accuse, it only observes. The city moves around him as if nothing has changed, but he knows the tremors have begun. Beneath its foundations, men who built fortunes on secrecy will feel walls shift. Investigators will circle. Handlers will vanish. Records will dissolve in controlled fires. The machine will adapt. But one fracture will remain. A story too strange to bury. A whisper about a man who erased the air with the same silence that raised him. In the safe apartment, the photographs still rest on the table like silent witnesses. The hospital bracelet copy lies atop them. The star beside Aiden's name brighter than ink has any right to be. He picks it up and holds it to the light. For the first time, he does not think of rules or exits or contingency plans. He thinks of two boys in a state group home trading promises in the dark, inventing futures because no one else would. He thinks of the way Aiden always smiled before sleep, as if tomorrow might be better, as if belief itself could build shelter. He folds the paper carefully, once, then twice, until it becomes small enough to fit inside his wallet. It will stay. There, pressed against his chest, a weight lighter than guilt but heavier than air. He does not intend to forget. Outside, the city continues its rituals: horns, footsteps, neon, wind. He walks through it without disguise, not as a contractor or a vendor or a roomer. He is only a man moving forward, carrying a star that belonged to someone else. No one notices him, and that is the closest thing to freedom he will ever know. But the story does not end in neat symmetry. In another office, in another tower, a woman in a gray suit opens a folder marked Irregularities. Inside is the same photocopy of the hospital bracelet, duplicated before it ever reached the clinic. She studies the name, the date, the notation linking to case numbers. She smiles, faint and sharp, the kind of smile that promises unfinished business. She closes the folder and makes a call to a number with no country code. The assassin does not know it yet, but the ledger he thought closed has pages still turning. The city has more secrets, and some of them wear his face. He walks on, unaware, carrying his brother's star into a future that will not forgive, but may still remember. The story ends here, but its shadow keeps moving.